The Oklahoma State Auditor has, the Oklahoma State Auditor and Inspector is charged with one primary duty: to provide oversight and accountability for every tax dollar in Oklahoma. In 2019, Governor Stitt issued an order directing my office to conduct a special investigative audit of EPIC charter schools and all related entities. We followed the governor's directive, and what we found was very disappointing. Let me be perfectly clear. This is not an indictment of charter schools or the charter school model. My findings are specific to the management and administration of this specific charter school. This is part one of the audit report and will only focus on the funds held by the school. The infrastructure of EPIC charter schools is remarkably complex. I have seen a lot of fraud in my 23 years, and this situation is deeply concerning. I'm going to present three key issues today: how the owners of EPIC charter schools built this structure; second, the findings of our investigative audit; and third, why every taxpayer in Oklahoma should likewise be concerned. State statute defines EPIC charter schools as a public school district, just like the Oklahoma City or Tulsa school districts. Therefore, EPIC is subject by law to the same oversight and accountability we demand from every school district across this state. EPIC charter schools designed an administrative system that is not consistent with the Oklahoma Charter School Act and their charter agreements. If you look at the slide, Megan, thank you. You can see that EPIC uses three pots of money. First, the school fund. These are the normal expenditures you would expect to see for a school. Then we have the pot for EYS for profit. This is a private company owned by Ben Harris and David Cheney. EYS for profit was hired by EPIC Schools, which is also founded by Harris and Cheney. They take 10% of every tax dollar that comes through the school's door. Lastly, we have the learning funds. The school currently allows for each child to be designated $1,000 each per school year. This is given to EYS for profit and is supposed to be used for technology, curriculum, and extracurricular activities. EPIC Charter Schools was given almost $500 million during the audit period. From fiscal years 2015 to 2020, EPIC Schools received a total of $325.3 million. EYS for profit received management fees of $45.9 million. EYS for profit also took $79.3 million to manage the Student Learning Fund. This nearly $80 million has never been audited by an outside entity. EYS for profit controls more than 30% of the entire EPIC charter school budget. That is more than $125 million of student educational funds transferred into a for-profit management company with no transparency and no accountability. Who controls these hundreds of millions of dollars? It appears three people make the financial decisions at EPIC and its related entities. They are Ben Harris and David Cheney, who are the founders of EPIC and owners of EYS for profit, and a chief financial officer, Josh Brock, who answers to Harris and Cheney as the founders of the school, and he is also CFO of the for-profit entity EYS. This arrangement presents an inherent conflict of interest. Our audit is around 120 pages long, so it would take hours to explain all the violations we discovered. Here are just 7 findings that we found particularly notable. Number 1, Epic's structure is set up to provide their for-profit entity a financial incentive to recruit more students. Epic spent almost $3 million on advertising in 3 months to recruit new students. To put that in perspective, the $3 million Epic spent on advertising in just 3 months was enough money to buy 1.2 million school lunches for low-income students, buy 15,000 new Chromebooks, or buy 500,000 new textbooks. While many school districts are struggling, Epic spent millions from the school fund on advertising, which benefited EYS for profit. Number 2, Epic Schools uses the Learning Fund as a marketing tool to drive enrollment. Parents expect $1,000 for their child for school curriculum and activities. The school has paid almost $80 million into this fund, which is managed by Ben Harris and David Cheney. The method Epic used to calculate its student enrollment is still a mystery. So we cannot confirm that EYS was entitled to the nearly $80 million they received. It has never been independently audited. Our ability to audit these funds is currently in litigation. Number 3, EYS for Profit wanted to expand their brand to California. We received documents from the state of California confirming EYS for Profit used $203,000 from the learning funds to help with expenses for Epic California School. That money was dedicated for Oklahoma children. Worse yet, Epic founders used Oklahoma school employees to run the California school. They used $210,000 of Oklahoma resources to develop their project in California, and they only paid the money back after our office discovered what had happened. Harris and Cheney started the California school by using the pledged credit of Oklahoma Epic charter schools. What that means is they used school bank accounts as collateral to obtain a $500,000 loan to run their for-profit venture. The school board did not authorize this. Harris and Cheney used state resources and state employees to further their business interest. Number 4, EYS for Profit has a chief financial officer, a CFO, who serves not only Epic charter schools and Epic California schools, but also serves as CFO for EYS for Profit. A CFO is a position of trust. That person should watch over and safeguard the assets of the school district. How can the CFO of the school also be the CFO of the for-profit? On one hand, the CFO writes the check from the school funds, and then on the other hand, signs the back of the check as he deposits it on behalf of EYS for Profit. This violates the most basic accounting principles. You can't have a CFO whose priority is profit on one side and taxpayer protection on the other. Taxpayers must ask, are the students really the ones being served? Number 5, the legislature puts a 5% cap on administration costs for school districts to make sure as much money as possible goes to the children. Epic exceeded that 5% cap on administrative cost overhead year after year. Last year, Epic was forced to repay the state $500,000 for underreporting administrative cost above and beyond the 5%. However, that $500,000 was just a slap on the wrist. By our calculations, Epic owes the state of Oklahoma $8.9 million. My responsibility is to ensure the accurate amount gets to each student. This is further illustrated as I go into number 6. Looking at this chart, you can see that $46 million was paid to the Epic founders during the audit period. What did the taxpayers get for this? It appears that the arrangement between Epic Charter Schools and EYS for Profit will provide everything needed for administration of the school. However, we reviewed Oklahoma Employment Security Commission reports and found that from July 2014 through October 2018, this for-profit company, which was in charge of managing 2 entire school districts, had 0 employees. From November 2018 to present, EYS for Profit has hired just 3 employees. At the same time, Epic School Fund, the amount retained by the school, pays for 75 when we ask about the number of employees, EYS for Profit provided for school administration, Ben Harris told us, quote, "What the legislature will do if we make our employee count public record, they will bludgeon us about our fees," end quote. Number 7, major financial transactions are conducted without board approval. We found $6 million in transfers back and forth between Epic school entities without board approval. We found $3.3 million in loans from one Epic entity to another without board approval. That would be like the superintendent of Oklahoma City Schools, with no board approval whatsoever, just lending $3 million to the superintendent of Tulsa Public Schools. Public schools cannot do that. From this thorough and exhaustive investigative audit, I remain concerned that the money is not getting to the students. The lack of cooperation and the roadblocks encountered was unprecedented in the experience of the State Auditor's Office. This is your money, and you deserve accountability. It appears that Epic did not comply with laws and regulations for reporting requirements. Certified documents were submitted in a haphazard manner with estimates rather than actual numbers. Oklahoma has limited resources, and in the last few years, our legislators have taken big steps and taxpayers have made great sacrifices to increase funding for education. It doesn't seem like our education dollars are balanced when I see Epic spent almost $3 million for a 3-month media blitz and used our tax dollars for their California school. Yet, our classroom teachers are taking money away from their own families to buy their classroom supplies. We are sharing our findings with the Office of the Attorney General, the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, and the Oklahoma Tax Commission. We will also share our findings with several federal agencies, including the Office of the Inspector General, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I want to thank Governor Stitt for his commitment to initiate this audit of Epic Charter Schools. We have met with the governor's office throughout the audit to ensure that we were following the scope and the spirit of the governor's directive. I want to thank my incredible team for their work. They've done an amazing job on this audit, and they're here with me today. I am determined to carry out my constitutional duties to safeguard the expenditures of public funds, your money. I am honored and I am proud to serve as your state auditor. You are always my priority, and I will always report my findings directly to you. And I'm not done. At this time, I would be happy to answer any questions. I would ask that you wait for a microphone first, please.
I have a question. As your experience as an auditor, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the worst, how bad is this audit in terms of irregularities?
I have 23 years of auditing experience at all levels, from the auditor to the director of audits and now to state auditor. I would say that this ranks at a 10.
This ranks as what?
A 10,
The worst you've seen?
the worst. One of the worst.
Auditor, in your opening remarks, you used the word fraud. Are you accusing Epic of fraud in this case?
Fraud is a legal term, and I think that my remarks said, I have seen a lot of fraud in my 23 years, and this situation deeply concerns me.
Auditor, what is your call to action for lawmakers based on these findings?
I would invite legislators to my office if they're concerned about these findings, where I can walk them through the documentation, give them the comfort that they need to know that my findings are substantiated and solid, and then I would encourage them to start looking at the oversight to make sure that whenever we give money to any governmental entity, that the controls are in place, that we're going to be assured as taxpayers that it's going for the purpose it was intended.
You indicated that the limit on the administrative cost was a violation, but could you elaborate on any other laws that may have been broken as a result of these?
I think that I will leave that up to the Attorney General's office to determine which laws have been broken and which items they want to follow up on.
And would you consider Epic, were they helpful in terms of helping your office?
Helpful is not a word I would use. But you should also know that sometimes as the state auditor, I was not the one directly asking for those documents, and I may have heard some of the most hard cases, so I don't want to be short in giving credit for any times that they were helpful.
And if I could just add one question, what is the status of the legal case in which you're still trying to obtain some documents from UIS?
Judge Mai has asked that we not discuss the court case in the media, so I want to respect her wishes, but it is on OSCN, and if you have any trouble finding that court case, I can help you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Auditor Byrd, thank you very much. Two things. Can you give us an example of you said this was unprecedented, I don't think you used the word obstruction, but roadblocks, I think you said. You faced unprecedented roadblocks. Can you give us some examples of that as well? And then can you talk about the sense you got? I mean, do you feel like there was money that was not actually going to the students at Epic Charter Schools? Did you get a sense for were parents, were people who were enrolled in these schools, were they getting everything they should have been from the school? Did you get a sense about that?
Well, you ask about the roadblocks. I want to say that in a normal audit, investigative audit, we don't issue subpoenas in regular routine audits, but in this audit, or in normal investigative audits, we might issue 2, 3 subpoenas. This audit, we were forced to, reach around 50 subpoenas because we weren't getting the information that we needed. Now, in answer to your question about do I feel like the money was getting to the students, I want to be very careful here. It's not my job to speculate. I'm here to report the facts. I can point you to the example I used of the $203,000 that went to California. I can talk to you about the resources, the school employees that were used. I think those might be good examples to support my concern about questioning whether or not the money really got to the children.
Thank you very much. Can you give us any other names of people you subpoenaed? Did you subpoena Ben Harris? Did you subpoena Mr. Cheney? Did you subpoena Mr. Brock?
That is a lot of information, Trace. I would ask for you to send that to me, and I will get you that information. I don't want to give flippant answers up here.
Sure. Let's just take those 3 at the top. Did you subpoena those 3 gentlemen?
No, whenever you say subpoena those 3 gentlemen, what do you mean? Did I ask to interview them? Did I ask to meet with them? Certainly. They're key players in this audit. We reached out to them. We did meet with Ben Harris. We did meet with Josh Brock. Mr. Cheney chose not to meet with us.
Okay, and I apologize, I didn't go to law school. So you're saying you had to put out 50 subpoenas, either for documents, for specific records, or specific interviews, potentially. So let's take your interviews with Mr. Harris and Mr. Brock. You asked to meet with them. Did they comply immediately, or did you then have to subpoena them to get them to meet with you?
Well, a subpoena is not going to get them to meet with me. A subpoena, we use a subpoena to obtain financial records.
Okay.
The ability the request to meet with us, that was just a request. And it's their option to not meet with us if they choose not to.
I apologize. Thank you.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on the enrollment method? You said they were using some unknown enrollment method, or you couldn't determine how many students?
You know, we looked into this matter quite a bit, and we did have more in our report. And as we looked at it, we felt that it may not meet the spirit of Judge Mai's request not to discuss the learning funds. At the last minute, we did take that information out, and we expect that to be in part 2. But the remark I made was the method EPIC used to calculate its student enrollment is still a mystery. So we cannot confirm that EYS was entitled to the nearly $80 million they received. And I would like to leave that remark at that and let the report speak for itself.
Is that something you've talked to the State Department of Education about?
All of our interviews are documented in our work papers. And as most of you know, our work papers are open record the minute we publish our report. As far as enrollment, we asked for reports from the State Department of Education, but that was as far as we went. Now, those reports were everything the State Department of Education had. I don't want to leave that like we weren't very thorough, but you need to understand that there was a lot of vagueness. There were a lot of questions that we still need to get answered, and so that will just be pushed into part 2.
I have one more question, if nobody else does. You mentioned several times that a bottom line issue for you is money not reaching students, and that should concern parents and taxpayers. Charter schools, by design, are meant to be more accountable to the marketplace, to the families. What questions should EPIC parents have for their school board, for their school officials, for their principals, about your findings, based on your findings?
Well, you know, EPIC has a very interesting setup. According to their financial statement audit report that's filed each year, it mentions that the board members are elected. In a typical school district, your board members are elected from the community. Obviously, with this being statewide, that's a little more difficult. But regardless of the ability for parents to elect those board members, every taxpayer, every parent has a responsibility to be involved with their public school district. They have a responsibility to know where the money's going. They have a voice, and quite frankly, it's time that taxpayers in Oklahoma started using that voice and demanding answers. Okay, if there are no other questions,
While we're at it, how's the Seaworth Academy audit going?
Okay, the question is for the Seaworth Academy audit. It's a pending investigative audit, and we are now currently focused on it and hope to have it out soon. So that's about all I can say on an ongoing investigation. Thanks. Okay, well, thank you all for coming, and if you have any questions, please know that my office is always responsive. We want to get you any information that you'd like to have. Thank you for coming.